You know, this has been a bit of a care homecoming for me, and I didn't know I needed it. I didn't know I needed to be restored and filled in the way I have been filled. So thank you. Thank all of you. We do not have a long time for this conversation. So I'm going to jump in first to introduce you to these amazing advocates and activists and care heroes. First, we have Elena Hung right next to me. Elena is the co-founder and executive director of Little Lobbyists, which is a family-led organization that advocates for children with complex medical needs and disabilities. She's also one of the co-chairs of Healthcare Voter, which holds elected officials accountable for their votes on healthcare, and she's an amazing human. So thank you, Elena. And next we have actress, comedian, screenwriter, and producer, and I'm curious if she also owns the word advocate and activist, because I have seen her out there, Diane Raphael. She co-hosts Deep Dive podcasts and founded the Jane Club, which is a community for women and caregivers, which recently pivoted to a digital space offering a village to support all the Janes who are in the United States and around the world. And I remember being at the Jane Club with you. It was a really special community, so thank you for being here. And rounding out our panel, we have SEIU member Raisiene Reece. I knew SEIU was in the house. She's been working with children for over 23 years, and she owns and operates All God's Children's Childcare in Victorville, California. And she is a pastor at Faith Over Fear Christian Ministries and the founder and executive director at Women of Noble Character. And I'm so thrilled to be with you on this stage today, Raisiene. So, to ground ourselves, and as a part of the Caring Across tradition, I'm gonna start with a bit of the personal and ask you all to do the same. And that is, what has your child care experience been like? And I have to say, when I thought about that question for myself originally, I'm not gonna lie that my first thing that I did was I went back to the shock of the pandemic when I was caring and working at the same time, and my husband was in a job where he had to be in person pretty early on in the pandemic, and so it was me doing all of that quietly, and it felt like no one saw it. No one saw me doing the caring and working at the same time. And we would be advocating for childcare investments as I was sort of quickly, quietly going into rooms and helping with math that I didn't even remember myself. And so I initially went to that kind of painful moment. It's kind of in my body forever, I think, that period. But then I thought, the reason I'm able to actually be here in California is because I have a longtime caregiver who has supported and worked with my family for over a decade. And her support for my family, it has made my work, my life, and my career possible. Right. So that's where I will focus. So, I'm hoping, Elena, you could go first and just say a little bit about, what has been your personal child care story for you? What has been the hard parts and what's been enriching?
Yeah. So thank you. Good morning, everybody. You went to the pandemic. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and what happens in Washington, D.C. is that the moment you find out you're pregnant or expecting an addition to your family, you call the child care center and get placed on a waiting list. Like, that's the first thing. So, you get this great news, and you call your parents, you call your best friend, and you call the child care center. And maybe not in that order even. So that's what I did with my son about a decade ago, and I hear from my friends that things are about the same now. And 2 years after that, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I did the same. And unexpectedly, my magical daughter was born with a number of serious medical conditions that affected her airway, her lungs, her heart, and her kidneys. She ended up being in the neonatal intensive care unit for over 5 months, for the first 5 months of her life. And so during that time that we were on the waiting list, we ended up losing our spot on the list because of all that time. And when she was ready to be discharged, the question we had was how to care for her, because now she needed round-the-clock care, skilled care. And I was shocked to find out that our insurance would not cover the skilled nursing home care that she needed. They did pay for her hospitalization. They paid millions of dollars, like literally $3 million for her to be in the hospital and get the care she needed, but not to get the care she needed at home. So we turned to Medicaid for that. So.
Thank you. June.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored. And I'm really coming to this conversation because of the caregivers in my life, because you brought yours into the space, Fatima, but I also have, the reason why I'm here today in this seat is because of a woman named Juliana de la Torre and Lupe Pleitez. I'm not able to do my life. And I don't know who said it on the previous panel, if it was Jen, but care work truly makes all other work possible, and that's been my experience. I love caregiving. I love being a mother, and I also have been absolutely shocked at how little information there is on how to employ domestic workers in the home. That is how I came to NWWA, when I knew I needed a full-time nanny to continue to work after I had my first child. And I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know what the boundaries were in this relationship. I didn't know how to professionalize that worker in my home. And that is how I've come to NWWA and the issue of care in general, as really an employer. For myself, I was definitely in the position of taking care of small children and a sick parent at the same time. I know so many women find themselves in that position, and also being told, like, oh, you're in these critical years where you should be making the most money you'll ever make. And all of the investments I had made in my professional life felt like they were all coming together at this moment where caregiving was so important. So to bring in professional caregivers into my home and to really understand, because for me it's also a decade-long relationship, how important that workspace is for my domestic workers, for me, for my children, and how much I needed to learn about the actual work of caregiving. And how much total respect I have for it, because in no uncertain terms, it has changed my life. Yeah. And when I say my life, I mean the life of my father, who I was also able to take care of at the end of his life. I mean the lives of my children, who received impeccable care and also impeccable mothering from me, because I felt I could show up in the ways that I wanted to. So I'm really here because I've been deeply impacted by caregivers. I hate the term working mom because all moms work, but I've been deeply impacted by the caregivers in my life, how they've changed it, and I'm incredibly grateful.
Thank you, June. Raisiene, the personal.
Personal. My personal, the greatest struggle that I've been involved with during my 23 years being a provider has been a journey that has involved many of my sisters and brothers. You know, coming into this, I came into it because I couldn't find reliable childcare, and decided that I wanted to provide that for other people. You know, a safe environment where people could go to work and be confident in the care of their children. What I didn't realize, though, was that I was getting into an even bigger struggle than that. And I remember in 2003, I had been in childcare for about 3 years, and I saw a group of providers that was marching at the Capitol. And I wanted to know, being a new provider, what is this? What are they fighting for? And that began my 20-year journey involved with my sisters and brothers in helping the struggle that childcare providers were going through. And it took years, almost 20 years of just blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice from providers, over 40,000 providers, fighting for a seat at the table to be able to have a voice in what was best for us. And we did it through lobby visits and commission hearings and letters and phone calls and marching at the Capitol. And I remember numerous times getting on the bus at 2 in the morning with my daycare parents and my daycare children. You know, I have children that are adults now that remember that experience fondly.
That's cool.
You know, and it was always the same message and always very clear, you know, that childcare keeps California running. And we wanted everyone. Yeah. And we didn't just organize providers. We got parents involved, community allies, and even politicians to help us with that win. And it has now resulted, all that hard work and the struggle has resulted in 2 contracts that have resulted in massive, massive wins for providers, parents, and their children.
I'm so glad, Raisiene. Raisiene, I am so glad that you brought up the wins. The wins in California have been transformative and are a model and are giving a boost to all of us. And so the question that I have for all of you, and I'm going to start here, Elena, is you all have a mic right now. What is it that you want to use that mic for to ask your policymakers at the state level or at the federal level to do? So for example, right now, I'm fighting for a $16 billion federal investment to stabilize the child care sector. I'm clear on that. Elena, you know, these policymakers, they can make a difference. What would you have them do?
I want, on this topic, a care system that includes all children, and that means medically complex children, disabled children, that they also need childcare. And it is a collective responsibility whether or not your child is disabled, whether or not you even have a child, right? There is, I believe, no such thing as other people's children. Yeah. They're all our children. And I would love to see that inclusion as a starting point and not as an end goal. Yeah. And to do that, I think we need to really unlearn the ableism that is so pervasive around us. Disabled people, disabled children are othered and stigmatized so much that we don't even see it. And so I think, we really need to recognize that ourselves. And it's a big change, but it starts really small. Like, I would like to ask all of you in this room to stop saying special needs.
Yeah.
Just remove that from your vocabulary. And that's for two reasons. One is disability is a legal term, right? It has legal meaning, it has legal rights that are conferred, and special needs doesn't. So when we're talking about childcare for disabled children, disability is a right. The second reason is what the heck is special needs anyway, right? There's nothing special about it. We all have the same needs. All the children have the same needs, and that's the need to be loved, to be safe, and to receive the care that they need to survive and thrive. That's true for all children.
Yeah.
So that's a call. That's right. So that is a call to action for policymakers, but a call for all of us in this room, y'all. June.
Oh, there's so much to choose from, but one of the things that I really want is a year parental leave. I really do, because a part of me really, I came from a family where my father was our primary caretaker for many years, and not because he chose to, because he didn't have work. And so it was, I grew up in a very egalitarian household in that sense, where our dad took care of me and my sisters. And I believe that this care conversation is, the work of care is so deeply undervalued, and it is so tied to who is doing it. Yeah. And I really believe that men need to be taking care of their children. And when we change the conversation on who gets to take care of our children, we change everything. And I think we're also, I'm raising two boys until they tell me otherwise, but I think we also, that I know for my father, although he wouldn't have chosen that, it was the greatest honor of his life. And I think we don't give our boys their full humanity when they don't get to babysit, when they don't get to take care of children, and we don't give men that opportunity as well. And I think a part of that is 1 year of parental leave when we have our children. One part.
Raisiene, you have won so much in California, the first of its kind contract to include things like the retirement fund, funding for healthcare, funding for training. I have a feeling you are not done.
No. No. Yes.
We are not done.
Yes. Something that's been repeated over and over again here is the fact that care workers, their voice needs to be heard when it comes to long-term solutions for care. One of the reasons that we have been able to make the progress that we have is because of coming together as a union with one big voice. You know what I mean? There is power and strength in numbers. And I believe that care workers can be real partners in making a change by being able to come together as a union and organizing. They hear us. They didn't hear us. For so many, it took so long for us to have a union because, first of all, we needed a governor that would sign a bill that would even allow us to have a union, And so I want policymakers to hear us, to listen to us, to give us the opportunity to let them know what makes us better, what is going to make us thrive. Because if we, during the pandemic, we were patted on the back and applauded for being the backbone, for being the support of essential workers. But what many people fail to realize is that we have always been the support for essential workers. Child care centers are from 6 to 6. So who has been taking care of those doctors, nurses, police officers, warehouse workers? Who's been taking care of those children all this time? I operate a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week childcare because it's necessary. Not because I necessarily want to, but because it's necessary, you know? And then the awful part was, even after being applauded and patted on the back for being the backbone of the economy, we're back at the table for our second contract, having to scratch and claw for the little things that we needed, you know? And that's what really needs to be addressed, is that you understand, they know, just like we know, what we do, that every last person in here, and I'm so proud because of, I'm so proud to be here with everybody that's here today. After all those that have gotten up on this stage and have advocated for care, I am proud to say I'm a care worker, you know? You know? Yeah. We are, and I want to say this because I'm going to toot my own horn too, we are amazing people.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so Elena and June and Raisiene, thank you. It's care and childcare. It's the work
Yes.
that makes all work possible. Right. You're heroes.
Thank you.
That aren't always named as heroes. But part of my task as I listen to this panel is to not let our policymakers ever forget that.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.